Was there ever a time you're thankful the pandemic happened? What was the reason? First child born right at the beginning of it. Being off from work with benefits for months longer than expected gave me so much more time with my child and wife than I ever would have had. Time spent like that is impossible to replicate later. Our last child was born in the middle of quarantine. The extra time at home with my wife and all of our kids is absolutely priceless. I drew with them, danced, learned Sully songs, and got to hold them so much more. More time with my kids and the wife also allowed me to spend more time with my brother during his last months before he died of cancer. Time I otherwise would have spent working. Was given the opportunity to keep my job, work from home, and move out of state. The only thing keeping me in my home state was my job, great pay, insane benefits, etc. So when they told me I could get out of Dodge and keep my spot with the company, I didn't even need to consider. Frick yes. I had a taste of remote working and I'm not going back to the office. Frankly, I do 3x as much while I actually work 3x less. I can concentrate on my work. I can spend hours coding without anyone saying let's go grab some coffee, or let's go smoke or dozen other excuses we used to not work. And best thingness, I no longer have to affect morning bulls meeting where site manager just talks. She really likes the sound of her own voice. As someone who was the only person who already worked from home and all my co-workers were in person, I found myself in more useless meetings because they wanted to check in with everyone else. That sucked. Happy to hear you liked it. A lot of people like the socialization of being in an office. I prefer to socialize with people that I don't work with. Okay, without going into too much, the week lockdown happened, my ex moved out. It was a bad relationship but I was in denial. So now I was locked inside, with a lot of big feelings and nowhere to go. It forced me to confront myself, a lot of my own mental issues and a lot of my own trauma. I hated it, resisted it and fought it. Eventually though I learned to work on myself slowly, and I don't think that would have happened without lockdown. Yes, it made me slow down and reevaluate what I was doing with my life. I cut out people who were dragging me down, and reconnected with old friends through group Zoom calls, changed jobs, started taking care of my body and lost 30 pounds. Found a new hobby. I do wish I made these changes years ago, instead of waiting for a global health crisis to kick my butt into gear. I do wish I made these changes years ago, instead of waiting for a global health crisis to kick my butt into gear. It's like they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. My daughter was born last year. Being able to work from home for a year has given me an opportunity to spend so much time with her that I don't think most fathers have. Also had a baby. Tons of quality time has been amazing. My mom is 85 and in assisted living in a city 250 miles away. During lockdown I started calling her every day at 11 AM, and we became closer than we have ever been. She became a close friend. That is quite a gift. She's become a lot more confused lately and is slipping into dementia now. I'm sorry her last coherent year had to be during COVID lockdown, but I am so glad we had our daily chats. We still do, but she is fading now. Love you, Mom. It gave me some time to think a lot about myself and where I was going, and I realized I was taking the wrong subject trying to set myself up for a career I didn't want. A lot of the responses here are similar. It seems that people used to keep themselves busy in a hurry to distract themselves from the important things, and getting quarantined was their wake-up call. Freaking absolutely. I am an English teacher and I have maybe 2-4 classes throughout the day. Before, I would have to travel to and from each class and maybe go home in between if there was time. I live in Bogota and it's a big city with no metro and the traffic sucks donkey balls. Now, all my classes are online. I've saved between 3 and 6 hours of travel time each day. Yes, I got to keep my son home from school the entire year. We homeschooled, and I spent so much more time with him. We did a lot of fun things during the day, the park, video games, etc. that we wouldn't have got to do otherwise. Also I got an itch to start working out last summer and have lost almost 50 pounds. It made me realize how bad my relationship was. I hate comparing situations. Everyone struggles differently, but he didn't talk to me for the first 6 weeks of the lockdown because his stress was worse than mine. He was at his mum's with his brother, having her cook and clean and basically do everything for him while he played games all day. Meanwhile, I had just moved in my own flat, had no bed and very little furniture, no internet, and I was struggling to get hold of groceries, but despite all that he had it worse. I realized that I needed to look after myself. That sounds like my soon-to-be ex asked me to forego benefits for myself and our children so he wouldn't have to pay child support. He has no bills. I'm supporting a household. When I woke up 5 minutes before my university classes. Happened multiple times. It's a small thing compared to all the horribleness that happened during the pandemic, but I did feel thankful. My 14-year-old dog tore her CCL the week before everything shut down. The vet said she wasn't a good candidate for surgery because of the risks associated with her age. We didn't know what to do. She couldn't put any weight on it at all. A few days later I lost my job and was staying home all day. I spent a few days researching everything I could about dogs and ligaments. Then I got to work. I designed a whole physical therapy routine for my dog and set the plan in motion. And it worked. Within 2 months she was able to walk normally without a limp. Within 4 months she was able to move around like she'd never been injured in the first place. I never would have been able to put in all the time with the physical therapy if I hadn't lost my job. So I can't help but feel a bit thankful. My dog is still around, happy and healthy. She just stole my sock and ran off into the yard. I love that troublemaker. Yes. 1. I got to know my daughter better. We are closer than ever. 2. I got to know my spouse better. He moved out before I was about to get expelled for poor attendance, but thanks to the pandemic attendance didn't matter and I was able to graduate. My son was struggling with bullying and discipline issues and getting into drugs. All those problems melted away when the lockdown started. This year has been amazing for him. He's on top of all his schoolwork and he got to do a lot of backpacking and skiing and things he normally wouldn't have been able to. I was able to give birth without my family harassing me in the room. They harassed me anyways, but at least I could enjoy my baby in peace. I feel this. It was so nice to have my newborn with no worries about intrusions and passing the baby. It was just me, my husband, our daughter and our sweet little baby just bonding. It was a much more peaceful 4th trimester than with my firstborn. I proposed to my girlfriend on the 20th of March. She said yes. Lockdown happened the following day, so she moved in with me into a small 2-bedroom apartment. That Wednesday, I got laid off from a job I desperately wanted to quit. Since I got laid off and didn't quit, I got enhanced unemployment, which basically meant I got a raise. A couple months later, we got married. Due to COVID regulations, we could only have 10 people at the wedding, which kept the guest list small for a very good reason that everyone understood, and kept our wedding expenses very low. Getting married allowed me to get on my wife's insurance, which was much less expensive than getting it on my own. A little over a month later, I started a job related to pandemic response, which paid very well. I made more during the second half of 2020 than in all of 2019. This income allowed me to save up enough to put a decent down payment on a house with historically low interest rates. In December, I got another, more stable, job, which required me to work from home. This job pays about the same as the one I had before the pandemic, and it's for a much better company with many more opportunities for advancement. TLDR. Before, single, renting, in debt. After, married, homeowner, with comfortable nest egg. Reminder to anyone reading this that this person has absolutely dunked on the pandemic. Haha. If you are more like me and spent most of the time doing your job a bit worse, in your pajamas, and put some life goals on the back burner, that's not a failure or anything. You survived yet another history book event, so that's pretty great. I got to meet my best friend. He once replied to a post or something and asked if we wanted to play some games together. He was living in the US while I was in Germany, but our schedules worked really well together and we got to spend a lot of time together. Over time he and I each introduced some other friends and played different games, and now we've formed our own friend group. He just recently moved back to Finland and now we play a little less together, but I'm really glad to have met him. We are also planning to meet up sometime this or next year with the other guys from our group since we only know each other from gaming together. Dude, that's amazing. I've had the same thing. Due to schools being closed, I was able to get to know my friends a lot better and get out of a toxic online friendship. Working from home has drastically improved my confidence at work. I didn't have to deal with the social anxiety of going to work, interacting with people, feeling like an imposter. Even my husband noticed a change in the sound of my voice when I'd be on work calls. I'm now slated for promotion this year. Pre-pandemic traffic, I commuted like 2.5 hours of commute time one way. During the height of the pandemic, I think once I saw like 7 cars total on my commute. My drive was reduced to like an hour and 10 minutes. It was odd to have the turnpike practically to myself. Also because my job has to be done on site. During the pandemic, a couple more job openings opened up near me. I got a job near me and don't have to worry about post-pandemic work traffic because my job is 10 minutes away from my house. I know it will be buried, but I really wanted to tell this somewhere, so here we go. I am very anxious. Most probably have social anxiety, but I didn't go to a doctor for a diagnosis. Anyway, in the autumn of 2020 I started high school, and none of my previous classmates were in my class. At the beginning, I had to go physically to school, and even if just half the class was present, we were split in 2 halves and one group went to school and the other took online classes, switching every week. I would come home exhausted. It was a lot of social interaction and new people, so a lot of anxiety, and it was too much. Luckily, I only went for 3 weeks until the COVID situation got worse and we switched to full online. This helped a lot by taking away anxiety-inducing factors like how I look, how I speak and things like that. Also, the interactions, both with teachers and classmates on Discord, didn't feel so direct, so they produced less anxiety. It was also easier to be in a conversation but not saying anything online than physical. One day, a group that formed added me on their Discord, which only contained about 15 people of my class, because they needed one more player in an Among Us game and knew I was a nice guy. Probably because I also shared me homework with people from there a few times. Since then I started to enter their calls and slowly relax around them. After a few months, I could finally feel comfortable around them, and I actually felt like, hey, I actually made some friends. I also went out with them outside a few times while we were in quarantine, which helped me develop even more. Overall, the quarantine and spending time online allowed me to take everything slower and gave me time to feel comfortable around these new people in these new situations. And here I am now, with only 1 week of school left, as a totally different person than I was 9 months before. I made friends. I grew more social. I kinda discovered my clothing taste. I am still in the process of figuring this out, but I am getting somewhere. And I grew my self-esteem. Sure, COVID wasn't the only thing that helped me achieve this. It took a lot of effort, motivation, hope and support from my sister, but I can't deny that little things like spending time online rather than physical, or a silly game like Among Us helped me start my growing process. There is still more to be done. My development isn't over yet and I still have things to work on, but I am so proud of myself, of the person that I am growing into, and I am so thankful to all the people that helped me get here. If you are in a very low spot in life, remember that seemingly small things can butterfly effect into a huge avalanche of events that positively impact your life. All you have to do is wait to see what tomorrow will bring. I want to end this with a lyric from my favorite artist that I might also tattoo on myself or something. LOL. Hopeless changes over time. Good for you. I'm glad. I am thankful for the quarantine, not the pandemic. I used to think I was introverted until I was left alone with my thoughts for far too long and realized how much I need social interaction in my life. You still need social interaction as an introvert. You just need alone time to recharge your batteries. The fact that I don't have to constantly overwhelm myself with the grind of life. Sure, it meant that I can't go anywhere as conveniently, but I felt like the world slowed down to a pace which I was comfortable with. The pandemic has made so many things so much more accessible. People with disabilities have been told for years that it's impossible to conduct much of anything over Zoom. But once non-disabled people had no other choice, it was suddenly possible. The folks in my life who can't tolerate much in the way of travel, crowds, transitions, etc., have finally been able to do things they've wanted to. Because of the pandemic, Australia's top arts universities in big cities had a huge decrease in international students, and hundreds of apartment complexes were empty and desperate. It's safe to say there wasn't a lot of competition. This means a lot to me since I lived in a very small, barely populated town, and I would likely go unnoticed or prioritized less over international students. I had the opportunity to go to my dream uni and get a steal of an apartment lease with my partner. Though sometimes I feel like I'm undeserving and feel ashamed of ever taking advantage of the borders being closed. Don't ever think that you don't deserve to be there. I'd imagine international students tend to be prioritized because the uni makes more money from their tuition, not because they're more talented. You're living out your dream. Ever since it started, people message me more often. I don't really have any close friends, and so the few messages I get are my entire social life. Really, for me it was completely the opposite. Completely lost touch with all my friends through the first lockdown. We would occasionally have a conversation that would last a long time, then not talk for a month, but since we got back we have more to talk about, so we text more. So many times before the pandemic I constantly called in sick at work due to a metabolic disorder I have, as well as some mental struggles. Once we started working from home, I was able to start dealing with my health problems much better, so I haven't had to call in sick at all. Also, I have started a few new hobbies during the pandemic, playing the violin and singing, and I now have a new job. That's a lot better than the job I had at the start of the pandemic. Lastly, I have been able to reconnect with some friends I hadn't really been in touch with before the pandemic. So, overall this pandemic has actually been good to me. My calling out sick was more for the physical than mental. I tore up my back right when we went into lockdown. I was able to drag around my computer and work in many positions that would have been unacceptable in the office. If not, I would have used about 4 or 5 months of sick leave, paid and unpaid. The pandemic gave me the time to stop going to church and reevaluate my whole belief system. Turns out I was in a cult that I had been in my whole life and devoted my whole life to. Needless to say, I GTFO and am now a free-thinking individual, not a programmed robot. I don't think I would have given myself the time to research if I didn't suddenly have a lot of time on my hands and churches were closed for months. I've been able to understand my newly diagnosed ADHD son and what his challenges are with regards to school so much better than I understood it when he was in school full time. I never wanted to homeschool my kids, but doing online school for the last school year has been informative. I think it's going to help me advocate for him so much better than if we hadn't had this experience. It's also been completely out of the norm and interesting to have our whole family home, husband working from home, kids homeschooling, and have no outside family demands on us due to isolation protocols. It hasn't been a 100% great experience, but it has been an experience. My boys, the best beagle to ever beagle and an amazing orange tabby cat, the Orange Menace, were both elderly when I went to work from home. I feel incredibly lucky that I kept my job and got to spend the last year and a half of their lives spending every day with them. I lost my beagle in January at the ripe old age of 19. 1/2, and my cat passed from cancer in May. I am so grateful for the time I had with them. I moved in with my boyfriend at the beginning of March 2020, and we were forced to sink or swim with our relationship because we were suddenly both home all of the time in a 2-bedroom apartment. We had to make a lot of fast life changes. He had to quit his job and find a work from home position because I am high risk, for example, and it brought us a lot closer together as a couple. We're planning to get married after the pandemic. Yes, I'm a major introvert, and for a year and a half I didn't have to make up an excuse as to why I wasn't attending something I was invited to. Now I'm getting anxiety about everyone who wants to meet up and do things. I stopped getting fast food for lunch and started making my own lunch every day for work. I have never felt healthier. No more junk food. Thanks, plague. My abusive stepdad caught COVID last April and died a really horrible death. I've been free for over a year now and everything is so much better. I'm grateful that the pandemic happened because it allowed me to live happier than before. That's dark as heck, but honestly that's the kind of darkness you should embrace. I'm glad you got some closure. My boyfriend and I had been working in the service industry for a long time and trying to navigate our relationship amidst all the toxic alcoholism and drug culture that comes with it. If the pandemic didn't happen, we'd probably have broken up from the instability. But instead, we both quit the service industry. I got a stable desk job working from home and he enrolled in college at almost 40 years old to continue to pursue his ambition to become a firefighter. Finally got out of that toxic, unhealthy industry. Work from home made caring for the newborn easier. Neither myself nor my wife lost income. Being a privileged upper middle class family, we made out pretty well. The family reunion that I really didn't want to go to was cancelled. I'm terribly ashamed of some missing teeth in the front of my mouth. Masks let me conceal that until I'm ready to share. Yes, me too. As a matter of fact, my whole mouth is swollen because I finally had the surgery to remove the pieces 2 days ago. Next is healing and a bridge and I'm really hoping I can get it in before the whole mask thing is over. I wish the best for you and your chompers. Yes, the pandemic opened people up to the idea that working at home was feasible and perhaps desirable. I hope it sparked the idea that some form of universal income may become necessary. The shutdowns impacted people the same way that automation will, and we should be prepared for it. I'm a ED nurse and they stopped letting in visitors, which was amazing. I know people think it's mean, but most of the time visitors are a problem. I loved being able to focus on my patients and their needs one-to-one instead of getting the family ginger ale and turkey sandwiches every 5 minutes. My wife gave birth in August and we both say it was so nice having it be just the two of us for those 3 days. Working from home, spending more quality time with family, and buying a van. I'm grateful. I know this situation wasn't positive for many people. I'm divorced and had 50/50 custody of my son. But when the pandemic hit, my work went remote and my son got to attend remote school at my house every day since his mom still went to her office. As a result, I got tons more time with my boy that I would never have had otherwise. It's absolutely priceless. It's my silver lining in this entire situation, but I definitely don't like the fact that it came with the cost of so much death and suffering in the world. As an autistic person, I was grateful that I, ironically, didn't have to mask and spend all day wasting energy pretending to be neurotypical in order to be accepted by my colleagues. Working from home I could let myself relax without worrying about being judged for behaviors I can't necessarily control. In a way, when the masks went on, my mask got to come off. I forgot how exhausting it is to suppress all your natural coping mechanisms for 8 hours a day 7 days a week. When the pandemic hit, all of my masking came crashing down on my head and shook me into looking for answers as to why I was crashing so hard. That's how I found out I was on the spectrum. Now, partially due to my GF's family being so in tune with their own mental health, I know my masking limits and give myself the space cushion needed to function as best I can. After my entire team got laid off, I decided to use the free time to write a book I've been wanting to tackle for years. Ended up being a trilogy, and the first title is out already. No, not providing a link, because this is a discussion and not a chance to shill. Had I not had the time away from an office, and the ability to focus mostly undistracted, it never would have happened. Almost every day I am thankful it happened. Going and I was in a job, construction trades, that I didn't even know was killing me. I was up at 4 AM every day when there was work, miserable all day at work, and then too tired to properly engage with my family once I got home. Then, when there wasn't work I'd be even grumpier as I'd be worried about how to pay bills and where my next check was coming from. Got laid off in April and was really down for almost a month. I started doing some projects around the house, built a garden, built a PC, fixed some stuff, etc., and spending more quality time with my wife and kids. I feel like I've really gotten to know these wonderful little people so much better than I would have otherwise, and they don't have to see dad coming home grumpy from work anymore. A couple of months into the pandemic, I found a job with a small service company in my trade and started using skills I hadn't used in years, as I had worked myself into a supervisor role at my old job and was mostly off the tools. I found that I love fixing things and my trade is really where it's at for me work-wise. Recently I took a new job that pays better and has more benefits and stability than my old service job. I'm doing plant maintenance now and there is potential for me to get a second trade ticket. I'm already a master electrician and new job wants to indenture me as a millwright. I love learning new skills and the crew at the new job are really fun guys to work with. Also, my children are so excited as dad's new job is at an ice cream plant. Throughout all of this I have gotten to be closer with my wife than ever before and we really enjoy our special times together after the kids are in bed and we can just relax. I know the pandemic was a horrible thing that happened, but my wife and I wouldn't trade the last year and a half for anything in the world. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.